Hello, everyone. If you're joining the webinar today, we're going to wait a few more minutes to let people get logged on, and then we'll start it. All right, I think we'll just give it a minute or so, and then we'll get this webinar started. Appreciate everybody joining on today. All right, everybody. Looks like we're getting quite a few people attending now, so we're just go ahead and get this started. We got an action-packed hour here for this webinar. I want to make sure we have plenty of time to get all this in and get all the questions answered. So today, welcome to the Missouri Soybeans Farm in Focus webinar. Today's theme is going to be Conservation in Focus Soil and Water Outcomes Fund Initiative. So this is quite exciting. I'm Clayton Light. I'm the Director of Conservation Agriculture and Farm Operations for Missouri Soybeans. And I've had the joy over the last couple of years working with Soil and Water Outcomes Fund in their programs and really watching this operation grow. It's neat and it's been a great journey for them. So with this, we want to be able to provide Missouri farmers an opportunity to hear this from Soil and Water Outcomes Fund, what they had to offer, how they've grown, and then really excitingly show it as a whole. We got Caitlin on with PepsiCo, who's going to be able to tell what the demand for carbon credits, what the sustainability goals are, and why there's a market for this today. So I think that'd be very beneficial. With this, I kind of will start off to show people what our partnerships looks like with Soil and Water Outcomes Fund and Missouri Soybeans. So back in 2021 was really a lot of conversations working between Missouri Soybeans and Soil and Water Outcomes Fund as they started to grow. How do we bring this program into Missouri, provide some opportunities in the carbon market space and environmental outcomes space as well for Missouri farmers. So I think in 2022 is when the RCPP project that we partnered on with Soil and Water Outcomes Fund came into Missouri. So that was 12 counties in Northwest Missouri. Had great participation from Missouri farmers, a lot of interest. What's really neat about Soil and Water Outcomes Fund is how straightforward it is and easy for farmers. They're very straightforward and easy for them to understand. I mean, it's not confusing. The contracts are easy. So had a big sign up for that. I think hit the acres pretty quickly within that. And then, in the following year in 2023, into 2022 and then 23, that's whenever all the climate smart funding was coming out through USDA. What was really neat is Soil and Water Outcomes Fund was able to land one of the largest grants from that was $95 million. So really caught a lot of momentum at that point, expanded into more states, opened up more counties in Missouri, and they'll go into that in detail here in a second. But also partnered with PepsiCo, really highlighting this public and private funding sources. And PepsiCo was over $200 million invested over a period of time in the Soil and Water Outcomes Fund to help bring these. So with that, I'll kind of just go in and kind of let everybody introduce themselves, but just want to say we got a good hour packed. If you guys got questions, please enter them in the chat or the Q&A below. We'll kind of get to them. Yeah, look forward to it. If you want to start, Amanda, by introducing yourself, and we'll go from there.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to join you today. My name is Amanda Shetler. I reside in Fontenelle, Iowa, Southwest Iowa. I am the field program representative for SWOF in Southwest Iowa, Northwest Missouri, Kansas, and Nebraska. Caitlin?
Hello, so nice to be with you all today. My name is Caitlin Colegrove, and I am on PepsiCo's Global Sustainability Office team, and I specifically lead the work that we're doing focused on agriculture in North America, so covering everything going on in the US and Canada with terrific partners like Soil Water Outcomes Fund, and excited to share more about that today. I reside in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I'll turn it over to Joe.
Everybody. My name is Joe Winchell. I'm the field program lead for Ag Outcomes and the Soil Water Outcomes Fund. So I work with Amanda and a team of several others across the Midwest in the United States, where we do work similar to what we do in Missouri, and been really excited to do the work as far as Clayton mentioned as a pilot project last year, and as we're expanding into more counties and more areas, more acres available. So I reside in the Iowa soybean office here in Des Moines area, and from South Central Iowa myself. So thank you, and look forward to the rest of the presentation.
All right.
All right, thank you guys. And if you want, I think we got a good presentation going for you. So we'll kick it off.
Sounds good. I will get that shared here. All right. Are we able to see that? Joe, are you able to see that?
Looks good.
Okay.
Yep, looks good.
Great. Fantastic. Well, like I said, I'm excited to be here today and share our program with all of you. I will say I believe we have an outstanding program available for some great conservation practices, and we will just kind of move through here. I know we already did some introductions with myself, Joe, and Caitlin. And to kind of start off, the Soil and Water Outcomes Fund provides financial incentives directly to farmers who implement new conservation practices that yield environmental outcomes like carbon sequestration and water quality improvement. We provide new market opportunities and revenue streams for farmers by selling these environmental outcomes to public and private beneficiaries. The Soil and Water Outcomes Fund is managed by Ag Outcomes and a subsidiary of Iowa Soybean Association. That's really important because Iowa Soybean Association really wanted to see a sustainability program offered to farmers that was streamlined and easy to sign up for. Over the past 2 years, the SWOF has enrolled 240,000 acres across 9 states. I will say, as the Missouri representative or Northwest Missouri representative, we have enrolled about 50,000 acres in the state of Missouri. So that's really exciting. We also continue to enroll more every day. So I'm sure that number will almost double by the time we get done with enrollment. Farmers enrolled in our program last year earned an average of $34 an acre for implementing new on-farm conservation practices. At this point, you're probably wondering what those new farm conservation practices are. We offer no-till transition, cover crops, and also adding a small grain into your rotation. Now, Caitlin will tell you a little bit how she fits into our program.
Sounds great. Thanks, Amanda. So I'm going to step back a little bit and just fill you all in a little bit about how PepsiCo thinks about this sort of work, and then share a little bit about how Soil Water Outcomes Fund fits into our portfolio of everything we've got going on. So we've got a graphic up here just illustrating the main areas where PepsiCo is working across what's called PEP Plus, which is our overall sustainability strategy as a company. And you can see there's a few different kind of buckets of things. One is really around positive choices for consumers, and that connects to things like finding new packaging solutions that are more sustainable, looking to innovate in terms of product offerings in our portfolio, and then also looking at kind of brands that are part of our portfolio where we may be able to kind of tell a bigger story about the connection between planet and people. The other big area is around positive value chain, and that really connects to everything that we're doing within our own house, right? So if you think about, all of the PepsiCo trucks, right, that are moving things around the country and around the world. If you think about all of our plants and distribution centers and everything that goes into all the products that we're creating, it's really making sure that we're doing our part as a company to reduce our impact and around everything that we directly control. And so that translates to everything from, looking to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, in all of those different areas that I spoke to, as well as really in particular focusing on water, which is of course, a key thing to look at as a company that sells quite a few beverages as well. And the area that myself and my team are really focused on is around agriculture, which is what we'll kind of get more into today. As we kind of look at all of the key ingredients that we source that go into our products that we sell, both here domestically in the US and around the world, what we really want to do is kind of customize any kind of interventions or any kind of support that we're lending to what the opportunities are with that particular crop and in that particular region. So you see here things called out like working on regenerative practices, which is where folks like Soil Water Outcomes Fund plug in. But also depending on the geography, we look at sustainable sourcing of ingredients and have very specific ways that we're defining that as a company, as well as looking at the folks who are growing the ingredients, right? The crops that are going into these products, and making sure that they are in a good place in terms of livelihoods, protected from a human rights standpoint, and are able to really kind of advance their families and take care of them. So again, all of that is really customized depending on what the opportunities are within that particular crop and within that particular geography. In North America, and in particular, really all of our work largely is focused on that regenerative practices bucket, because that's really kind of where we've got the biggest opportunity there. We can move to the next slide. So, I think probably clear to a lot of folks on the call, but just a reminder of kind of why we have this particular focus in agriculture. It's because, at its heart, as a food and beverage company, we are an agricultural company, right? Everything we do relies on the work that you all do day in and day out. And as a big global company, there's some big numbers around kind of what that looks like, right? So we've got over 30 different crops and ingredients that we're focused on and kind of deploying strategies around at a global level. Our footprint is more than 7 million acres of farmland holistically, which we know in a global sense is still a drop in the bucket. But we're really working to do our part to make sure that we're having an impact across our entire footprint. And then we know that impacts, a whole bunch of different farmers and other folks who are involved in the agricultural supply chain. And so looking to do our part there too. Yeah, move to the next slide, Amanda. And if we think about sort of the why behind, why we're doing all of this work as a company, there's a whole variety of different reasons. The first and really the most important here is that we want to keep farmers farming, right? And we want to be able to continue to source these key ingredients that are going into whatever it might be, a bag of Fritos to, a Diet Pepsi, from these regions that we're sourcing in, like Missouri, well into the future in a way that works for growers, but also for us, right, as kind of the end customer for those ingredients. And so that's the biggest reason. And then of course we layer on a lot of things that are happening externally, right? Whether that is increased consumer interest in kind of really understanding how companies are caring for their supply chain or wanting to better understand what companies are really doing around sustainability issues. Connected to what I said before too, there's a huge opportunity to really create stable and sure supply in the face of changing weather and other kinds of supply chain disruptions that we might see. And so we really see investing in regenerative agriculture as a way to kind of future proof and mitigate against some of those challenges. And then we've also got incoming things. So increasingly we're seeing more and more kind of forthcoming pieces of legislation or other regulatory pressures on big companies around this work, as well as kind of direct pressure that we get from activist groups and NGOs and others in this space too. So whole variety of different reasons why we're doing this work. But as I said at the beginning, the biggest one is really just that we want to keep farmers farming. We want to be able to continue to source these ingredients well into the future. And frankly, the future of this company depends on our ability to do that. You want to head to the next slide.
Oh.
Okay, you can go ahead and pull up the little, I think there's a couple animations there. Yeah, there you go.
Oh,
no, you're good. You're perfect. So I wanted to share a little bit about kind of how we're doing this when we think about agriculture. And in a very simplified way, this is kind of the flow of what that looks like when we think about this work. So the first, and again, the reason why I'm so excited to kind of talk with this group that's here today is that we find really fantastic partners. We're super humble about where we sit in the value chain and kind of where we can add value and where we can't, right? And so we want to find folks who are really experts, really connected on the ground in regions that are key sourcing regions for us with our crops, like Soil Water Outcomes Fund, and really invest and create long-term partnerships with those partners. And so we do that. You see a few examples of kind of logos that are up here, but we do that kind of both domestically and around the world. Again, sort of customizing what that partnership looks like to the unique needs of that geography and the opportunities within that particular crop. The second kind of stop in this triangle is looking at opportunities for shared value across kind of the supply chain. And so for us, kind of sitting where we sit as a brand, we really are specifically looking at opportunities with suppliers that we have. So ADM is a great example of this. And then also with customers for us. So think retailers and others. And so we've had some good success with developing co-investment models to really kind of, again, bring just more funding, more investment into this work, and share the burden, right, of the cost of all of this. So as an example, we've developed a long-term partnership with ADM, who's a key supplier for a variety of different ingredients, where they're actually going out and supporting farmers with new practices, and we're equally investing in that as companies. And then we also announced this summer a partnership with Walmart, where they're also bringing a large investment to the table to really cover their product footprint that's sold in their stores in the US of kind of Frito-Lay and Pepsi products, and co-investing in that as well. So that's a huge area for us. And I think something we're really continuing to grow, where we have alignment with both suppliers and customers. And then the third area really is that we want to, as a company, really kind of be a catalyst for the industry. And so, unlike, if I look at some of my peers who work, say, on our procurement team, where there might be some concerns about kind of talking to peers or working in, collaboration with folks who might be seen as competitors. In the sustainability world, like, we want everybody on board, right? And kind of moving in the same direction. And so we use a lot of these different platforms that you see here to find ways to work together. Because, as I mentioned before, we're looking at going after about 7 million acres. That's a drop in the bucket when we think about kind of the entire agricultural footprint globally. And so what can we do to be super transparent about what we're doing as a company? We try to really put as much out there publicly as we can about sort of our approach to this work. And what we've learned along the way, right? Kind of things that have gone well, things that haven't gone so well, and try to really kind of lead others within the food and beverage industry, but also looking at other industries too, whether it be biofuels or the apparel industry or others who have agricultural supply chains, and really think about how we can get everybody sort of investing and moving in a consistent direction. I'm going to move to the next slide. Yeah, so I wanted to just finish out with a couple, there's kind of a lot going on the slide here, but a couple examples of, in addition to agriculture, some of the things that we're doing as a company to really sort of walk the talk as it relates to our investments in sustainability. Like I said, we've got some really big ambitions around our agricultural supply chain and the ingredients that we're sourcing. And we set even higher goals for ourselves as a company around all the things that we directly control. And so you see here just a few examples of that, whether it's, things like switching to renewable fuel in our fleets that we operate, or a lot of work that's happening on packaging, or really investing in areas where there's a lot of water stress to ensure that we're really replenishing water resources that are impacted by our beverage business. So I'll leave it there. I'll hand it back to Amanda and look forward to any questions from the group.
Sounds great. Thank you, Caitlin.
Yeah.
A little bit more about our program. So farm eligibility, there are no minimum or maximum acres needed to enroll. You can also, one thing that I usually tell my producers when I'm working with them, you can also get an estimate on all of your acres and then pick and choose kind of what fields you want to do from there. You don't necessarily have to enroll all of them, even if you get an estimate. I did touch on a little bit earlier about eligible practices. So no-till or reduced tillage, converting to that is an eligible practice. Cover crops. We are looking for new acres of cover crops, but it's always good to have a conversation with either a field rep or someone in the main office about adding cover crops into your operation, or if you're already doing them, adding additional cover crops, because we do kind of have some options there. Like if you're using a winter kill species already, maybe we could transition you over to a winter hardy species. So doesn't necessarily have to be new acres. There might be room for improvement there. Then we also offer extended crop rotations. So if you want to add maybe wheat or grow your own rye seed, that is an option for you. And this fertilization management, it is reducing some of the nutrients you're using, and it's not a standalone practice, but it does boost some of our outcomes, which would boost your payment. In some of our templates, our purchase templates, you do have to be eligible and HEL and wetland compliant for USDA programs. Additional requirements, I think I kind of a little bit touched on this. If you're already using cover crops or a form of reduced tillage, you must expand the practice. So like I said, if you're using a winter kill species and wanted to use a winter hardy species, or if you're only doing cover crops on one side of the rotation and want to incorporate it into both sides of the rotation, that is also eligible. Another cool thing, and I have a big hit with this with my Missouri producers, we also do offer converting a field to a perennial crop like alfalfa, and you are able to use that for hay. Money matters. Payment schedule. Everyone usually asks, how much are the payments? When are we going to receive our money? I've also heard, other feedback from other carbon credit programs. And I will say we do average $35 an acre. With our payment schedule, we run 1-year contracts, but you are eligible to renew them yearly up to 10 years. You have the option to re-enroll those acres yearly, like I said. And then after signing the contract, you will receive 50% of your payment upfront. Usually takes a few weeks by the time we get our contracts processed. And then the balance is paid near the end of the contract after outcomes and practices are verified. So we will field verify every single field. And once we do that, for instance, if you have a rye cover crop, we will field verify that in the spring, and you'll receive the remainder 50% of your payment in the spring. I did kind of touch payments are based on the outcomes of the adopted practices. So what we look at is what you're doing in your rotation already. And maybe we will add, for say, a cover crop practice. And that's the difference that we are looking at for that carbon sequestered. Stackability. Can funds be combined with other incentives? Most areas are subject to be incompatible with government programs. So that just means that because we do have a Climate Smart grant, on some of our purchasing templates, we are not able to overlap that. But we do have some programs available that we are able to overlap and use NRCS funds with our program. So just best to reach out. We'll kind of run you through that and see which area fits you the best. Contracting information. We did talk about 1-year contracts, data requirements. So farmers can enter their field boundaries and practice information at our website, or you can also reach out to one of our field representatives and we can help you through that. I usually tell my customers it takes probably anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes. Probably the hardest part on your end is just rounding up your maps. So we can take that in a multitude of ways. If you have certification maps through FSA, crop insurance maps, or if you run Climate or My John Deere, it's easy to get those to us. And then we can work with you on getting the remainder of your information. Enrollment and assisted provided. That's just kind of what I was talking about. We can kind of help you through that. And then agronomic technical assistance provided. All SWOF field staff have in-field agronomic experience, and we are here to help you and offer guidance through the system. So like I said, 15, 20 minutes, it's really a streamlined process. If you would like, you could write down our website. This is our farmer portal, and you can create an account there. That kind of triggers us to reach out to you. Within that farmer portal at theoutcomesfund.com, you can enter your maps or also your field data. But like I said, we can easily help you through that process. Step 2, once we kind of get through getting your information added, we will send over an estimate or a proposed payment. That usually takes 1 or 2 weeks. And then once you receive your estimate, you can, like I said, pick and choose what fields you'd like to do. Some will pick and choose and some just enroll all. And then from there, we will send you over a contract via e-sign. And after you sign that, like I said, you'll receive that 50% payment upfront. Like I said, it does kind of take a little bit of time once we process the contract. But from there, our staff will end up field reviewing your cover crop, and then you'll receive the remaining 50% of your payment. Some technical info. Does this program claim the farmer's carbon asset? How are they calculated? Yes, they do. Carbon and nutrient outcomes are quantified using USDA models, Carbon Comet Cast, and nutrient tracking tool. What is the verification process? Like I said, every year a SWOF field representative will get to every field that is enrolled, and we will ensure that the contracted practices are being followed. We also pull annually water samples from tile outlets and soil samples from subset of enrolled acres. That information, definitely on like the soil and water sampling, is all kept within house. We don't allow any other businesses to see that. With the soil sampling, it is important to know too that if customers, the producer wants to see that information, we will also provide that to you. Are there penalties if a farmer is unable to implement the required practice? SWOF representatives maintain the authority to reject fields for unauthorized practices if deemed necessary, but most often contracts will enter an amendment process where we will rerun the fields in question through the USDA models again with the updated operational data and adjust payments as necessary for the updated outcomes. Essentially, what that is meaning is if we get out and do the field review and maybe we had claimed that we were going to do no-till and a cover crop, and now we're seeing maybe a little tillage was done before the cover crop, or a little tillage was done in the spring after they terminated the cover crop. And like I said, the intent was no-till. We can go in there and make an adjustment. It might lower the payment, but really we're just trying to quantify the most accurate data that's happening right there in the field. So that's what the payment will be based on. Okay, so we're going to look at a farmer scenario. This is Mirror Farms in McLean County. They run a corn-soybean rotation since 2008. They were using two tillage passes, excuse me, ahead of corn. No tilling soybeans. They began experimenting with covers in 2021 on 80 acres. So those probably 80 acres, I'm assuming were not eligible to enroll in our program if they had already been doing that within their rotation. So it looks like in 2024, we came in, we added an additional 420 acres of cover crops. And then in 2025, they transitioned their acres from that two tillage pass rotation to strip till on their corn rotation. And they also reduced their nitrogen by 10%, which would give an increase for their payment. In 2026, they continued to add another 500 acres of cover crops. Here it kind of breaks down what we look at. I mean, it's mainly what I just talked about through that template. You know, we were going from two tillage passes of corn to strip till ahead of corn. And then also we maintained the no-till on soybeans, but we shifted to a cereal rye crop ahead of the soybeans. So the calculation, how does the money come out? The payment is based on outcomes produced by implementing conservation practices such as cover crops, no-till, and etc. But outcomes are modeled based, so they vary from field to field depending on field history and other environmental factors. Those other environmental factors can be topography and soil types in there. As a result, payments across SWOF reach in year 2022 averaging $34 an acre. In general, the more practices adopted, the higher the payment, just because we have the difference from the baseline of what your operation was to what we've expanded it to. And that's all. This is my contact information. You definitely can reach out to me, and I will also provide my cell phone information later on.
Yeah, that was excellent, Amanda and Caitlin. Appreciate that. That was hopefully can spark a lot of good questions. So I'll mention to the audience out there, if you guys got questions, great opportunity to talk to Soil and Water Outcomes Fund and PepsiCo on some of these questions that you might have. So please feel free to drop that in the Q&A or the chat, and we can for sure get those questions answered right here for you. So feel free to do that. Think about questions you got. Is your farm eligible? You know, just think about some of that stuff. With that, I might kick it off with a couple questions just to get things flowing, get people thinking online. Make sure you guys submit those questions. I'll say it again. Anyways, for you, Caitlin, you know, one thing I would say for PepsiCo, as you're looking at, you know, carbon markets, just in general over the past few years, there's been so much talk about carbon markets, sustainability goals, climate change in the news. So, like, is this for PepsiCo? Is this something that the consumers are really demanding? Is it the stakeholders in the company that's making PepsiCo do all this sustainability goals, or kind of what is the driving force there?
Yeah, it's I think it comes from a lot of different places, and I think again, um, I think what we sort of come back to as a company is that it's it's in our interest, right, for the long-term viability of the company as a company that, again, sort of inherently is an agricultural company, um, to be part of helping to build resilience on farms, right, and kind of helping folks to in places where things are becoming tougher, right, because of changing weather and all these other things. We really want to kind of do our part to ease that transition. And because we know it's the right thing to do as a company. I'd say like that's really kind of the North Star and reason number one. But yes, certainly I think when we look at our company and just in general, when we look across the landscape, we're seeing of course a lot more pressure on companies, particularly publicly traded companies, to really do their part, and show all the ways that they're contributing. So that's a big part of it. And then I do think, and I know I mentioned that on the slide, but I think this regulatory piece is going to become an increasingly big area of kind of push. I think, again, our hope really is to frankly kind of get ahead and be beyond what the expectations are from a regulatory standpoint. And I think we also really want to work with folks, same thing in our supply chain, to again kind of be ahead of any potential regulation and just not have that be an impact. But I do think we'll continue to see more push there. And I think for folks, for some companies and for others who might not be quite as invested yet in this space, I think that may kind of drive a lot more action in coming years. I think from a consumer standpoint, we're not at the point yet where we're really looking to kind of make super specific kind of on product claims necessarily about the work that we're doing. I think honestly we're in a place of like, we want to like do the work before we start talking about the work in an on-pack way. We want to make sure we're like really investing in a way that's credible and really helping folks out. But I think what I think we have seen does really resonate with consumers, frankly, is talking about farmers and the folks who are really putting in the hard work to make a lot of these products come to life. And so we do a little bit of that, and I think we'd love to continue to do more of that in the future, kind of tell those stories about individuals and the things that they're doing within their own operations. So I think that continues to be a big opportunity too.
Yeah, thank you for that, Caitlin. I think
Yeah.
that's key for farmers to kind of understand why there's a demand for these carbon credits, ecosystem credits in general. So I think that's very helpful. Thank you for that. Amanda and Joe, do you have anything to add to that? Like on your end, Soil and Water Outcomes Fund is working with other companies as well. Sustainability goals. Do you have anything to add to that?
I don't think so.
No, Clayton,
I
sorry.
think Caitlin answered it great.
Yeah, sorry to put you on the spot there. Just didn't know if you guys had
Yeah.
anything else on that end of things.
Clayton,
I'm assuming a lot of the other companies are very similar to PepsiCo, wanting to meet those sustainability goals as well. So
yeah, and one thing I would add to that too. Oh, sorry, Joe. Is just that I'll let you jump in here too. Is just that I think we also, in general, are kind of as a company staying away from the sort of what we'd call carbon market space or carbon credit space. And that's because we have this big opportunity to invest directly in our supply chain, right? And so we're not looking to kind of offset, right, things that we're doing as a company. What we really want to do again is invest directly with folks that we know are in our supply chain, and kind of help folks in whatever way we can, as opposed to, I think what sometimes with some of these credits and offsets can sort of look like, oh, we're trying to kind of compensate, right, for things that maybe aren't as great that we're doing as a company. And I think part of that too is that we want to avoid what sometimes folks call kind of carbon tunnel vision, right? We want to be really thinking about the whole farm and how to make that more resilient. And of course, that goes across things like water. And, by the way, none of this is worth doing if it doesn't have a positive impact on farmers' ROI, right? And yields and all those kinds of things. And so I think, yeah, we sort of think of it more that way, so that we're really providing opportunities to like do the right things that will hit at kind of a bunch of different areas. And frankly, so that we make sure that we're not ever going after something as a company which might have unintended consequences, sort of in some other spaces too. But Joe, I'll let you jump in.
No, to piggyback off your comments there, Caitlin, and it was great because I'll be quite honest, like some of the terms I really dislike is carbon markets, and they are, but I think, it gives a perception or a stigma on what we are doing. And, really, I think, anyone who's been in agriculture for a number of years realizes that there's always been a focus or a hot spot, on what's the environmental impact of the food that we produce, right? And as farmers, the corn or soybeans or wheat or whatever you're growing, are entering a supply chain somewhere, and they're going into producing products that we utilize every day, whether that's fuel, fiber, or food. And, I look at this as just another wave of evolution of looking at, hey, what's the environmental impact of the food that we're creating? And how can we, lower or mitigate that impact? And, by not, by working specifically, and we could do a whole presentation on carbon GHG accounting, but specifically working in the supply chains for which, whether it's directly or indirectly that your grain that you grow ends up at. We're not looking to offset, things that are happening, across the world. We're specifically working in the supply chains that us in agriculture, especially in Missouri, are so tied so close to. So, that's the way I really think about it is, we're working on trying to look at scaling practices that have positive impact on the farm, agronomically, economically, but also looking at, creating lowering, mitigating the environmental footprint of the food that we produce every day. So, and it's really kind of tied pretty close knit to the places that, we're all involved in.
Yes, very well. Thank you for that. We do have a question here, so I'll get that out. Looks like, the question is 50% of the payment is at the signing of the contract. The other 50% is paid upon the verification of the practice and the model that generated the outcome. Is this outcome model and payment done every year on every field under the contract? And also, can the outcome-based payment increase or decrease each year depending on what the model says?
Yeah, I'll take that, Clayton. So when you enroll, we are looking at, we draw a field boundary, we look at a field, and then we'll enter in, for a baseline rotation, what have we been doing on that acre? We'll also enter in, as Amanda explained earlier, what's the future plan for at least one rotation out? So if it's a corn soybean rotation, like a lot of folks in Missouri are growing, we'll enter in at least, 2 years of baseline and looking forward 2 years. And we're really looking at that full crop rotation. So for example, someone's not, hey, I have a cereal rye planted the fall before and I no-till my soybeans the next spring, but the next year I'm going to chisel plow, field cultivate, and no cover crop. We're kind of doing and undoing some stuff there. So we want to look at that full crop rotation. So yes, the 50% of the payments paid up front. And then as Amanda also mentioned, we'll go out and visit every single field to say if a farmer said they were going to no-till, they did no-till or cover crop or whatever they said they would do. At that point, like I mentioned, a farmer can re-enroll, and basically by committing to saying, hey, I want to continue I entered a full crop rotation. I want to continue with my plan, or at least, maintaining that practice moving forward. And those modeled outcomes and therefore payment could change. But there's really two things that could change it, whether there's updates or calibrations to the environmental models we use. We continue to learn and things, and that's usually not a huge impact. Usually what could change those modeled outcomes and therefore the payment to the farmer year after year when they decide to re-enroll is just simply if there's a change in, planned operational data. So if a farmer decides to not continue to cover crop, but maintain no tilling in front of their corn, that could change things. If say, hey, I want to go from, I did try cereal rye from my corn, but I want to go to oats as a winter kill, that could change things, or vice versa. If you want to say, hey, I'm no tilling and I'm cover cropping in half my rotation, but I'm going to commit to start cover cropping my full rotation, that could change things as well. So, really looking at it as what you're doing and what you're generating as far as environmental benefit and what that correlates to payment is how things could go up or down. But in general, if things stay the same, the plan stays the same year to year, then, there's little to no change in the outcomes model and therefore the payment.
Yes, Joe, speaking on that, kind of build on that, with all the contracts and acres you guys have enrolled, is there times, that the farmer just doesn't get the practices in that they say they're going to do? They get the payment, 50% payment up front. Is there any penalties or anything like that? I think that's a concern with a lot of farmers is they don't want to overcommit, sign contracts, and then get themselves in any type of penalty situation. So can you touch on that a little bit?
Sure. So we understand farming is extremely dynamic, and being a subsidiary and sitting in the office of an organization that's led by 20 some farmers, the same as Clayton there is in Missouri, we fully understand farming is, you can have the best plan in the world, but Mother Nature throws knuckleballs into this situation, and we have complications or change in plans that we have to overcome. So if we had a plan to cover crop 1,000 acres and hey, on one field something happened, I wasn't able to get it done, I decided I needed to put some tile in this field, whatever it may have happened, we have a contract amendment process that just makes it very easy to, maybe we need to pull a field out for a year, then bring it back in the next year. Maybe there's a change of plans, but it still qualifies. So, although we need to, rerun the field to the environmental models because plans change, maybe it could still be included, but there's no penalty to that. Always remember, if you get 50% of your payment up front, say it's 1,000 acres at $35 an acre, $35,000, let's say. So you get half that up front, and then the second half we find out, hey, I had to pull 2 fields out. Then we just reassess, correct the contract amendment, and then recalibrate that second half of the payment. So instead of being $35,000, it was $30,000. You would just get the balance on the second half. Pretty easy. And we do have that happen. Again, it doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen year after year. And it's just, farming is dynamic. So, we've even had situations where farmers have been enrolled for 3 years. And in that 4th year, a landlord sold a field. So let's say, hey, I'm not farming this field anymore, so I can't re-enroll it. We've had situations where a farmer in the program, landlord sold a field, but another farmer in the program ended up buying the field. So we actually moved the field from one farmer to another within the program. It's very dynamic and very flexible to compensate or, work with the dynamics we work with in agriculture.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's very beneficial to showcase that, because, being led by farmers like you guys are and stuff, it really makes it easier, to understand. So I like that. Amanda, one thing for you is, what is the maximum length of the contract? I mean, if you have a 1-year contract, how long can a farmer keep enrolling if everything's going well?
You can enroll yearly up to 10 years, but we only take 1-year contracts. And I really think that this is a great part of our program because then you're not locked in long term. If things happen, life happens, then you're not committed to it for 10 years or 5 years, which is a really big flexibility for our program. I do think another question that I get posed a lot too, and maybe wasn't mentioned in my presentation, with our cover crops, and I see this a lot in Missouri, but you are able to graze those cover crops or hay those cover crops or even chop them for silage. So it's really nice because then you can get the benefit beyond soil erosion and nutrient management with your livestock.
Perfect. If we have more questions from the audience, make sure you drop them in the Q&A or the chat, and we can make sure to get them answered live. We are getting a few more questions here. Caitlin, for you, for PepsiCo, you had a slide in there talking about, the work all over the world, not just the United States. You guys got farmers all over. Sustainability and climate is not just something that we're seeing in the United States. Obviously, it's a worldwide topic of discussion. How does Missouri, or, not Missouri specifically, but United States as a whole, how do they shape up for sustainability, environmental conservation practices, reducing greenhouse gases? How do they kind of shape up with the global agriculture system?
Yeah. So I've got, like I said, I lead our work in US and Canada, and then I've got kind of counterparts who lead similar work in all the different regions that we work in all around the world. What I'd say, no pressure, is that everyone is really looking to us in the US on this work. I think we're really leading the way globally. And actually, to that end, I just had several colleagues make a trip over here from Europe and actually spent time with the Soil Water Outcomes Fund team and a couple other folks up in Iowa, learning about the work that we're doing in the Midwest, so that they can really bring that back to their programs in Poland or in Spain or in Turkey, so on and so forth. And then I'd say too, of course, there's tremendous differences, right? Depending on, which crop we're sourcing, but also depending on the size and scale of the farms, right? As we look at other sourcing regions, there's some parts of the world that we're sourcing from where there's a lot of smallholders in the supply chain. And so the kind of approach that we're taking there is very reflective of that, as opposed to in North America, right, where we see kind of bigger size, bigger acreage operations. Yes, it's something, it's one of the things that's really great about being part of a global team. I think we're constantly kind of connecting and sharing what we're learning from one another, whether it's, earlier this week, I was talking to one of our colleagues who's based in Indonesia about a biochar project that they've been running. We're looking to see if we can learn anything there, right? If that's something we might want to look at within the US. So yeah, learning from each other, but I'd say in general, looking kind of around the world, folks are really impressed by what we've got happening on the ground here in the US, and I think really sort of looking to us as a model of leader.
Yes, good. We do have another question here. And it's going to be for Amanda or Joe or both of you. Is the model that you guys use, publicly available for growers just to experiment with on their own? Or is that something, they don't have access to?
I can take that, Amanda. So the model that we use is publicly available. It was, co-developed between Colorado State and the USDA. There is a publicly available version, although I would say it is slightly different in maybe how in-depth it goes and some of the input data that it takes. I would say from when I came to the soil water outcomes from retail agriculture, it was interesting and it's kind of a good job of ours to interpret or best represent reality to an environmental model, to a computer. So it is available to a certain degree for the public, for a farmer to utilize, although you probably very quickly get frustrated, and I wouldn't exactly highly recommend it. But whether the system that we have to be able to meet with someone, collect that information, and get a payment estimate is really made and tailored to be able to kind of play with things, enter multiple fields, look at different practices that you're looking at implementing as well. So to answer the question directly, yes, it somewhat is publicly available in a certain version. But I guess I've never really had a farmer exactly want to go do it or do it themselves. So.
And I'll say, don't be afraid to sign up for our program. If it's not a fit for you, then we are okay with that. like I said, we're moving 240,000 acres already, and we plan to do a lot more. We know that our program is aligned for farmers and it's very easy to implement. So if it doesn't fit you, it's okay. We can run an estimate, and if it's not a fit, that's fine. Another couple things that I would like to mention, at least for Missouri farmers, I know NRCS in Missouri does a lot of multi-species mixes for their cover crops, or they require that. With our program, we look at single species, so that opens up a lot of flexibility for growers as well. Um, and then I usually do always get the question too, what if, we have a dry year, dry fall, and my cover crop doesn't grow? Normally, we would only do the field verification to get you your payment, but if the cover crop doesn't grow, at that time, we will ask for a bill and we'll still pay you out on your payment. Looks like we have another question, Clayton.
Oh, yep, just popped in there. If a farmer has been doing cereal rye cover following corn and no-tilling soybeans into green cover, those acres would not be eligible?
Those acres would be eligible if you put a cover crop following your bean harvest. So a lot of times I'll encourage growers to look at maybe doing like an oat or a turnip cover crop after bean harvest going into corn.
Yep, and on that one, I might just, I know in Missouri, and it's common a lot of other states as well, but not cover cropping in front of corn was what, kind of what that's going into, is very typical. So you may have a long time no-tiller cover cropper, but they still don't cover crop in front of corn. So on that, it seems like that field would be eligible to be enrolled if they start throwing something in front of corn, cover crop, like you mentioned. But the following year, when you put that in the soybeans, is that still eligible for a payment, or does it skip that year?
Yes, it would still be eligible for payment. So a lot of times I'll encourage producers to go ahead and at least run the estimate with the oats or the turnips if that's something they're interested in. And then that way it plays out to show them then what their entire rotation would pay on. So if it's still averaging that $34 an acre, a lot of times guys are like, okay, it's worth doing the oats and getting a little bit of growth then in the fall, after I harvest beans.
Yeah, I'd encourage a farmer to not think of this as so much as we're asking you to reduce tillage and cover crop and, say, hey, I no-till, or I strip till and don't till, and I cover crop in my operation. Really look at it, dissect your operation at a field by field basis. And I'm even on that field by field basis, as Amanda has mentioned, look at the whole rotation. Like Clayton mentioned, it's very common to no-till and cover crop, fall before a head of soybeans. Look at that whole rotation. It's still eligible that following year. But look at the whole rotation. And then also, if you're very comfortable with cover cropping, but you've only been cover cropping 20% of your acres, traditionally, look at other acres as if this would be an incentive to expand that. We see, well, I often think about the percent of acres that get cover cropped, how many overall farming operations does that touch? And how could we utilize the folks that are comfortable and experienced with cover cropping, but to expand it across their acres and look at how can we expand the practice of new acres?
Very good. Well, it looks like we're getting a little closer on time, so we'll start wrapping this up. If people listening to the webinar want to get a hold of Amanda, she's put her contact information in the chat. Visit theoutcomesfund.com. Very easy to do a Google search and find them. And it's a quick way to get a hold of them, do the contact me, and you can get right through. You can also just reach out to Missouri Soybeans and talk to myself. I can put you in direct contact with them as well. So with that, is there any final remarks from the panelists? Really appreciate everything today. So if anybody's got anything final to say, feel free.
I think the only thing, we're looking as cover crop period does slow down, we will probably be ending enrollment on that here in the next month. So if you are interested, definitely reach out soon on those cover crops. We will definitely be taking any transition from, conventional tillage to a reduced till or no till anytime, or if you're interested in adding a small grain into your rotation there in the spring, like an oat crop or something along that line too, we will be taking those acres all the way through the winter. So mainly the big time frame is if you're interested in the cover crop portion, reach out, please.
All right. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. It was a very good webinar, very insightful. Appreciate everybody today, and that will conclude our webinar. Thank you, guys.
Have a great day, everyone, and a great harvest.
Thank you.
Thank you.